everyone. I guess you might have experienced either one of the two issues. When you're working, you realize that there are shifting priorities. Your tasks and goals are constantly changing, or you're given too many conflicting things to do at once. This leaves you feeling overwhelmed and feels like you're running in circles. The second thing is that you realize that there are misaligned goals. What you think is important doesn't match what your manager or the company sees as important. And more scary than not is that when you work on something and later down the line you are questioned as to like does it align with the goals of the company, that sometimes makes you feel like you're disconnected, you're undervalued, and like your efforts aren't really counting. So the question that ultimately lies in whose responsibility is it to achieve the alignment with your boss when it comes to your goals, when it comes to your tasks? Chances are, I think sometimes the tricky question is that if we don't advocate for ourselves and we don't take the opportunity to actually clarify the whole end of the working relationship, then it becomes a case where we realize that there's a lot of stress and wasted effort. We get burnt out. We spend time on tasks that ultimately don't matter, leading to, say, low productivity and poor work quality. We end up in situations where our projects get stuck or fail because we don't have the right support or focus from the important people that can influence in the organization. Not only that, sometimes we feel like our career growth is limited because what we have done isn't clearly aligned to what drives success in an organization. And I think that for us to succeed in the workplace, it has to end up being, we should be able to justify to anyone that what we do adds to the value to organization, adds to the bottom line, and is in line with a clear direction. Recently came across this book, Managing Up, How to Get What You Need from the People in Charge. And I think it's interestingly important because end of the day when we work in the organization itself, chances are we'll pick up a lot of things from different people we work with, including team leaders, managers, and even higher ups. One way of how we manage conflicting and changing priorities sometimes could be the things we are taught from them. For example, you must understand the why. When there's shifting priorities, sometimes it's frustrating and sometimes you question like, hey, you said one thing today, how come a week later, a month later, you're changing certain things? So chances of how you can manage a conversation is that first of all, don't take those shifting priorities personally. Depending on what industry you work in, sometimes the changes are actually coming from external factors such as market shift, company strategy, and not your performance or your manager's inconsistency, although that also might be a contributing factor. Number two is that when there are conflicting or changing priorities, you must be able to filter and not jump on every new idea immediately. Sometimes when you are instructed by your manager or your boss, on certain ideas, right? Perhaps what you might mention is that you might have to probably start to understand what is their working style like, how they come across certain priorities, and is it truly this is a priority that's been communicated from top down? And if so, asking directly this question I think helps so we understand that whether this idea is truly what matters and this is what top management wants, or this is the idea that the people we work with, the high ups, they sort of have this creative brainstorm and just jump on this certain idea. And one of way how we can manage stakeholders that come up with different ideas is that whenever they suggest a new idea, what we can do is acknowledge it and say that, okay, that's interesting. I'll take a look at the idea and also gently ask them how does it fit with our existing goals and plans. The reason why we want to do this sometimes is when we are working with different people, sometimes we have different people that bring different skill set to the table. One of which is some people are very good in creative brainstorming. However, because of that personality type or their temperament, sometimes they come with a lot of ideas at the point in time, but they don't really think through about execution, or they don't think through whether does this creative idea meet with the organizational goal. And so sometimes is the onus is on us to actually slow things down and ask them clearly and outline the impact to them and say that this is the time and resources this new task will require, for example. And then you explain to them how new priorities might delay or risk current projects. If this changes, then this task will be delayed. So what you're doing is that you're trying to encourage, you're not trying to tell the person like, hey, stop coming on new ideas. What you're telling them is that, great, you come up with this idea, does it meet our organizational goal? That's the first thing you should do. Second thing is say that if you want us to go in this new direction, this will involve in certain things being paused, certain things will have to be completely stopped. Are we okay to do those things? So in a sense, you're teaching them that everything that is being proposed or said has an impact to what is being done in your plate. So this is one way I believe how you manage stakeholders. And I realize some people have this difficulty of saying no. And the reason why they're difficult saying no is that they assume the other person, probably a stakeholder, a manager, or even team lead, has already thought things through. Sometimes they might not be the case, and sometimes the responsibility is on us to manage our own workload. Now, another aspect of this particular takeaway of this video is that aligning with your manager's vision and goals. This was something I learned from a previous team lead where it's extremely important to align with your manager's visions and goals because as a team, you are being assessed accordingly to how you meet the organization goals and KPI. And usually these goals are being cascaded down from top down management. So chances are if you do not align your goals to what your manager is being rated upon, then you should not be working on that project itself. Because when it comes to annual performance review, it'll be very extremely hard to justify the things that you do, why you do them, and whether you should be rated accordingly. So how you go along doing this is that you must figure out how can you pick your battles, meaning to say aim for 70% alignment with your manager's key priorities. And again, this depends on different industries you work in. And having said that, if your manager has clearly articulated there are three things you need to achieve, chances are, and they're very clear about what you need to achieve, and these are not likely to change, then by all means, then you of course follow what your manager has outlined in terms of goals. The second thing is that you need to learn how to bridge the gap. So whenever you have different ideas or opinions, you must be able to figure out how to discuss this openly with your stakeholder. And for example, let's say I work in the digital marketing industry, and chances are sometimes we need to do experiments or trial periods for alternative approaches. Then these are the time where you propose certain experiments or trial period and say that, hey, I want to do this. I believe this will help us in our goal. Can we have a trial period together where we run this experiment and then review the results together? The reason why you do this is that you want the other person to feel like they're being involved in your ideas, and if they have the authority to say no to your suggestions, then at least you have surfaced out the suggestions to them. At least they know that you are trying to drive value in the organization by proposing something that will help us get closer to the goal. Now, let's say they have said yes to your experiment, and this is when you show them the ROI of your work in the organization. So, what you need to do is you need to provide data, you need to provide results. For example, say conversion rates increase, bigger deals, and this is how you make a stronger business case for your proposal going forward. Now, working with people sometimes is we have to realize that there are a lot of things they're putting on the table, which is their reputation, and also as we work longer with them and they get a sense of who we are as a person, how we make our decisions, how we propose ideas, and how we vet through ideas to make sure there is a direct impact on the organization's KPI and goals, right? Then it becomes easier over time to get people's buy-in and get people's support. But if it's in the initial stages of, say, working together, for example, let's say you've been promoted to a role and the first 6 months to a year, right? Chances are sometimes you have to demonstrate to a person over a period of time, this is how you think about things, this is how you consult them whenever you want to start something new, this is how you get the buy-in, this is how you're going to plan to manage objections. Then after a period of time, once you get comfortable with the way you see the task, the way you approach the task, the way you handle objections, the way you report to them, the chances are after a period of time, it gets easier for you to get support, and they know and have faith and have trust based on past track record with them that you are capable of doing certain things. And something that I also learned from a previous team lead is that it's so important to maintain ongoing alignment. What you want to regularly do is you want to have small chats, you want to have monthly or quarterly reviews. The reason why you want to do so is because rather than waiting all the way until performance review to get like to figure out to each other like, hey, what have you achieved this year? Do I agree that what you did was average, good, or great? So this is something that is incredibly important. I think when we work, I think none of us want to be surprised when we receive a annual performance review and we are like, wait a second, I did a lot of things, but maybe the other person didn't view what you did as valuable to the organization. So I think it's where you sometimes will have to take the ownership and also regularly schedule check-ins. And not only that, I think personally, what I realized is that it's important to develop a one-year vision for yourself. The reason why you want to do that is because if you foresee yourself working long-term in the environment, chances are you cannot outsource this development of one-year vision to your boss or to your higher ups. You have to take control of your direction in the organization or the things you want to learn or the things you want to improve on. So that helps you along the line. And end of the day, anytime you're being proactive about things that you want to address and you're managing the conversation, you're always viewed as a proactive person. So the takeaways from this book is influenced by managing up, how to get what you need from the people in charge.